Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai. So today we're celebrating the disappearance of His Divine Grace Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So we have several things that we're going to read today. Of course, also today's Gadadhar Pandit disappearance day also, a member of the Panchatattva. And we'll read a couple of things about him also. So it's kind of lengthy because when I was looking up to read about Bhaktivinoda, there's so much information. Just amazing how much there is there actually. And it kind of brings to life this understanding that these great souls, they're beyond reproach. They're incredibly saintly, dedicated souls with the sole idea of distribution of Krishna consciousness. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Yad yad achariti shreista tat tat evaitaro jana sayat pramana kurite lokastat anuvartate. There Krishna is saying that whatever action is performed by a great man, common men will follow in his footsteps. So we see that whatever standards they set by exemplary acts, by his activities, the whole world pursues. So when I was reading that, I was thinking about that particular verse in the Bhagavad Gita, and what was astonishing is who could actually follow Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. His example, his exemplary acts are just beyond understanding of human person. So this is one of the great acharyas of the Krishna consciousness movement, and we're going to read about his exemplary life, and we're going to try to understand a little bit. So please do pay attention. It's very important because we need to know who our predecessors are and why we're in this Krishna conscious movement, what we're doing. It's a rare soul. Manusyanam sahasreshu kasya yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kasya mamveti tatvataha. So out of many thousands of men, one may pursue the Supreme Personality of Godhead and endeavor for perfection. But even out of those thousands, hardly one will know Krishna in truth. And this is Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He's one of those out of thousands, maybe millions of souls who are trying to achieve perfection in life. But he's one of those unique individuals that has accomplished that. So first I'd like to read something that Archana Prabhu gave me from Srila Prabhupada in one of his lectures, a Bhagavatam class, July 19th, 1974. It was in New Vrindavan. So Prabhupada quotes, Krishna consciousness movement does not mean that you give up your occupational duty, give up your home, give up your family. No. There are many grahastas, as we have got. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a grahasta. He did not give up his home, nor neither his job. He was a magistrate, government official, but he became a great devotee by culture. What is that culture? Krishna Katha. Simply he was coming from his office at say 5:30 in the evening, and immediately he would eat food and go to his room and sleep. And then he will rise up at 3 or 5 and begin writing books. So he gave us so many nice books, Chaitanya Shikshamrita especially, and many song books in Bengali, in Hindi, some of them in Sanskrit. So he was in this way engaged. So if one wants to serve Krishna, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life is a good example. Haribol. Yes, we sing every morning Sri Nam Kirtan here. That was written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And in the songbook, there's at least half dozen or more songs that are published in the songbook. So he did all this in his so-called spare time, which he actually created. He created that spare time by giving up eating and sleeping. And we'll hear about that a little bit later on in this discourse. But that's how he was able to increase his bhajan, his service in the hearing and chanting. And as Prabhupada says in that particular lecture, that was his qualification, because he became attracted to hearing about Krishna. And that was what purified him. When we read the pastimes of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he came from a background, a family that didn't even believe in Vaishnava activity, Vaishnava culture. They were Brahmanas, and they were in a Kayastha family, but they didn't even worship Krishna in their family, more or less like all of us. All right, so we'll begin. It's going to be a little lengthy, please bear with me, and let's see how long we can last. I won't read everything. I've kind of highlighted things in here that I thought all of us would probably be interested in hearing. So please forgive me if I didn't do it right. All right. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, 1838 to 1914, is a prominent preceptor, acharya in our succession of spiritual masters and disciples coming from Lord Krishna. He was a pioneering spiritual leader, a householder, a magistrate working in colonial India under the British rule, a prolific preacher, writer, and poet. He wrote volumes of books reintroducing the pure teachings of Lord Chaitanya at a time when those teachings had practically become lost. He composed hundreds of devotional songs glorifying Krishna to uplift the consciousness of the suffering people of this world. He corresponded with philosophers, theologians, leaders, scholars, professors of his time, and sent books, including the life and precepts of Lord Chaitanya, to university libraries in foreign countries, planting the seeds for a worldwide movement of Krishna consciousness. Bhaktivinoda Thakur discovered and excavated the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. Along with his devoted wife, Bhagavati Devi, he raised 10 children, including illustrious Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Can you imagine, in all doing this, he raised 10 children? I know I had one child, and I almost didn't make it. I can't even imagine practicing Krishna consciousness with 10 children and working a full-time job. Amazing. So, he raised 10 children, including the illustrious Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who would become a great spiritual leader in his own time and the spiritual master of ISKCON's founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Above all, Bhaktivinoda Thakur taught devotion to Krishna by his personal example. In his life story, excerpted below, demonstrates a tremendous amount of courage, character, and perseverance in the face of many difficulties, and gives hope to those of us who may be wondering just how to find the time to serve Lord Sri Krishna, his holy names, and his devotees in our ever-busy lives. In many ways, aspiring devotees of Krishna today owe a significant debt to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur for charting the course and laying the foundation for the modern-day Krishna consciousness movement. Once, as he looked out from his window across the river towards the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a vision that people from all nations would soon come together there, in harmony, through the blissful chanting of the holy names of Krishna, Sankirtan. His great-grand disciple, Srila Prabhupada, who humbly and fearlessly spread Krishna consciousness to the far corners of the world, thought it significant that he was born in 1896, the year the Thakur sent copies of the life and precepts of Lord Chaitanya to universities across the oceans. Okay, this is a chronological life story of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He actually wrote his own biography, actually. It's amazing. So this is what this is about. He wrote this. And this is what I'm reading here will be a compilation of things that Rupa Vilas wrote in his book, The Seventh Goswami. So these are just compilations of that. And we're just highlighting certain things that we thought would be presentable. Okay, adapted from the seventh Goswami by Rupa Vilas Das. In 1500, the avatar Krishna, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, inaugurated the Hare Krishna movement in Bengal, India. The movement, based on ancient Sanskrit texts of devotion to Krishna, like the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, spread all over India within a short time. It popularized Sankirtan, the congregational chanting of the Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, as a practical means of God realization and the panacea for the miseries of this age of materialism. In 1750, 2 centuries later, the influence of the Hare Krishna movement had waned. Sects of pseudo-devotees such as the Sahajiyas and similar groups have become prominent, professing love of Godhead but acting in base, immoral ways. These groups brought disrepute upon the pure movement begun by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In 1883, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who was named Kedarnath Datta by his parents, was born in opulent circumstances in Biranagar, in the district of Nadia, West Bengal. He was the 7th son of Raja Krishnananda Dutt, a great devotee of Lord Nityananda. He would be known as Daitya Kulera Prahlad, which means Prahlad in the family of non-devotees. Because Vaishnavism, the worship of Vishnu or Krishna, was not very much respected in his family. His childhood was spent at the mansion of his maternal grandfather in Birnagar. His environment at that time was very opulent. He got his elementary education at the primary school started by his grandmother. Later he attended an English school in Krishnanagar, started by the king of Nadia. He left that school when his older brother died of cholera. In 1849, when he was 11 years old, his father passed away. Subsequently, the grant of land that had been conferred upon his grandmother changed owners, and the family fell into great poverty. In 1850, when he was just 12, his mother arranged his future marriage to a 5-year-old daughter of Madhusudan Mitra Mahasaya, a resident of Ranagata. Around this time, his uncle Keshi Prasad Maheshaya, who had mastered English under the British education, schooled young Bhaktivinoda at his home in Calcutta. Kashi Prasad was a central figure in the literary circles of the time, being the editor of the Hindu Intelligencer. Bhaktivinoda assisted his uncle with selecting appropriate articles to publish in a newspaper. So he started out very early, this is age 11, helping his grandfather. And this is where he developed a lot of understanding of book publishing and editing. So he studied his books frequently in the public library. He later attended Calcutta's Hindu Charitable Institution High School. At the age of 18, Bhaktivinoda entered college in Calcutta. He started writing extensively in English and Bengali. He studied English literature and taught speech to a person who later became well-known orator in the British Parliament. Between 1857 and 58, he composed 2-part English epic entitled the Puriade, which he planned to complete in 12 books. These 2 books describe the life of Porus, who met Alexander the Great. He was very taken by Christian theology, regarding it more interesting and less offensive than Hindu monism, the Advaita Vedanta of Shankaracharya. He would spend hours comparing the writings of Channing, Theodore Parker, Emerson, and Newman at the British Indian Society. He gave a lecture on the evolution of matter through the material mode of goodness. This Dvijendranath Thakur was Bhaktivinoda Thakur's best friend during these scholastic years. He assisted Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his studies of Western religious literature. And I'm reading this part because it's very important. He studied all different religions, and from that study he came to the conclusion that Krishna consciousness was the best, the foremost religion in the world. So this is very important because all of us come from this different kind of background. And you can see all of us, some of us are Jewish, some of us are Protestants or Catholics. Some of us are nothing. But all of us came to Krishna consciousness, and we see that Krishna consciousness is a very important aspect of our life, the most important. So we see here Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he went through that exercise, but much more deeply than we did, of course. So it's very important to see that, how it was blending into an international society for Krishna consciousness. And we're living it here right now, today. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he foresaw that. Okay, during his post as the headmaster of the Medinipur High School, Bhaktivinoda looked into the various religious sects, their philosophies and practices. He could see that people in general were taking religion cheaply. He came to understand the unique importance of the Sankirtan movement, spreading love of God through chanting of his names, that had been established in Bengal by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Unfortunately, at that time, his movement was not well represented. Bhaktivinoda Thakur made an onslaught against those who were polluting Lord Chaitanya's teachings and who had, mostly because of their boldness, been seen by the public as representing the Gaudiya Vaishnava lineage, or followers of Vishnu or Krishna, coming in line from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared in Bengal, formerly known as Gaudadesh. In 1861, Bhaktivinoda Thakur accepted the post of a deputy magistrate in the government of Bengal. Later, after seeing the corruption of the government workers, he became a collectorate officer. He established an organization called the Bhartri Samaj, wrote an English book called Our Wants, constructed a home in Ranagat, and composed 2 novel poems in Bengali, Vijayanagarama and Sannyasi, which received praise from viewers. In 1868, he became the deputy magistrate of Dinajpur, West Bengal, the highest rank in the government that could be held by an Indian person during the British rule. At this time, he was finally able to procure rare copies of the sacred text Srimad Bhagavatam, describing the pastimes of Krishna and his associates, and Chaitanya Charitamrita, the biography of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He read Chaitanya Charitamrita repeatedly. His faith increased until he was absorbed in the sacred text all day and night. He began incessantly submitting heartfelt prayers to the Lord's mercy, came to understand the supreme majesty and power of the absolute personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and his incarnation in this age, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He published a song about Lord Chaitanya entitled Satyanandana Premalankara. In 1869, he was transferred to Kamparana, during which time his second son, Radhika Prasad, was born. In Kamparana, people used to worship a ghost in a banyan tree. The ghost had the power to influence the mind of the local judge to decide in the favor of the worshipper. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur advised a local scholar to read Srimad Bhagavatam under the tree continuously, day and night. After 1 month, the tree crashed to the ground, and many people found renewed faith in the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's incredible. So, in 1873, near the capital of Orissa, in the town of Kamanala, there lived a mystic named Bishakishana, who would lean into a fire, then return to an erect sitting posture. In this way, he'd rock back and forth over the flames. By his acquired mystic powers, he could also produce fire from his head. He had 2 companions going by the names of Brahma and Shiva. He claimed to be Mahavishnu. Together, they were the divine trinity, the creator, maintainer, and destroyer of the universe, described in the sacred scriptures. Some of the lesser kings of Orissa came under his sway and were providing funds for the construction of a temple. They also sent him women. Bishakeshana declared he'd drive off the British from ruling Orissa and would himself become king. He published such statements, which were circulated all around Orissa. The British thought him a revolutionary for speaking out against the British rule, so the district governor of Bengal drew up an arrest. However, nobody dared to act upon these orders, fearing I'm pronouncing it wrong. Bishakishena, mystic power, sorry. Mr. Ravinshaw, District Commissioner for Orissa, requested Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur to bring Bishakeshana to justice. Bhaktivinoda Thakur went personally to see him. The yogi showed some powers that would normally scare off an ordinary man, and informed Bhaktivinoda Thakur that he knew well who he was, but that since he was the Lord, Bhaktivinoda better not interfere with him. That was enough for Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who replied by acknowledging his accomplishments in yoga and tantra and requesting him to come to Puri, where he could receive the blessings of Jagannath, the famous deity of Krishna there. Bishakeshana haughtily replied, quote, "Why should I come to see Jagannath? He's only a hunk of wood. I am the Supreme in person." So Bhaktivinoda Thakur became furious. He arrested the rogue, brought him to Puri, and threw him in jail, where he was guarded by 36 constables and 72 policemen. The fearless Bhaktivinoda Thakur tried Bishakeshana in Puri. The trial lasted 18 days, during which thousands of people whom he had control over gathered outside the courtroom demanding his release. On day 6 of the trial, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's daughter, Kadambini, became seriously ill and nearly died. Bhaktivinoda Thakur knew it was the power of the tantric yogi at work. He remarked, "Yes, let us all die, but this rascal must be punished." End of quote. The next day in court, the yogi announced he'd shown his power and would show much more. He suggested that Bhaktivinoda Thakur should release him at once or face worse miseries. On the last day of the trial, Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself became ill from high fever and suffered exactly as his daughter had. But the determined Bhaktivinoda Thakur pronounced the man guilty and sentenced him to 18 months for political conspiracy. When Bishakeshana was being readied for jail, the district medical officer cut off his hair. Apparently, the yogi drew power from his long hair. He hadn't eaten or drunk during the whole trial, so he fell to the floor like a dead man and had to be taken to jail by stretcher. After 3 months, he was moved to the central jail at Midnapur, where he took poison and died. Haribol. In between the years of 1874 and 93, during these years, Bhaktivinoda Thakur spent much time in seclusion, chanting the holy names. Though he still executed his worldly duties, he wrote several books in Sanskrit, including Sri Krishna Samhita, Tattva Sutram, Tattva Viveka. He wrote many books in Bengali, such as Kalyana, Kalpataru. In 1847, he composed Datta Kaustuba in Sanskrit. While in Puri, he established a Vaishnava discussion society known as the Bhagavat Samsat. In the Jagannath Vallabha Gardens, where the saint Sri Ramananda Roy, a contemporary of Lord Chaitanya, had held his worship. All the prominent Vaishnavas at the time joined his group except for one, Raghunath Das Babaji. He thought that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was unauthorized, as he did not wear the customary religious symbols of neck beads, or kuntimala, or clay marking tilak. So at this time, Bhaktivinoda Maharaj didn't wear those particular tilak or kuntimala. Moreover, the Babaji advised other Vaishnavas to avoid Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's association. Soon thereafter, Raghunath Das Babaji contracted a deadly illness. In a dream, Lord Jagannath appeared to him and told him to pray for the mercy of Bhaktivinoda Thakur if he at all wanted release from the illness and death. He did so. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave him special medicines and cured him. At this time, Raghunath Das Babaji gained awareness of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's exalted spiritual position. Sri Swarup Das Babaji, who performed his worship, bhajan, at Satsana near the ocean in Puri, showed much affection for Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and gave him profound instructions and insights from his realizations on the chanting of the holy name. Charan Das Babaji preached and printed books advising that one should chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in personal meditation, but Nitai Gaur Radhe Sham Hare Krishna Hare Ram in public kirtan. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur preached long and hard to him, trying to convince him to stop spreading this unauthorized mantra. Eventually, Charan Das Babaji came to his senses and begged forgiveness from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, admitting his fault. 6 months later, Charan Das Babaji went mad and died in great distress. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was one of the foremost devotional scholars of his time, yet he always humbly presented himself as the insignificant messenger of the Lord, as we can note from the following passage. This is his quote. The way how I got the inspiration to compile this book is a divine mystery, which I felt not proper from my part to disclose, as it might be bridging spiritual conceit. But subsequently, I realized that it would be an undoing to my spiritual master, which might stand as an obstacle on the path of my spiritual progress. Therefore, without any shame, I record the fact that while under the benediction of my guru, Sri Bapin Bihari Goswami, who belonged to the great heritage of Thakur Vamsi Bhadanandana, a faithful follower of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I was deeply penetrating upon Srimad Bhagavatam. One day in a vision, Sri Swarup Damodar, the right-hand personal adherent of Lord Sri Chaitanya, instructed me to compile the shlokas of Srimad Bhagavatam in accordance with the principles of Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana, as laid down by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so that the book will read with an easy understanding, with great interest and delight by the loving devotees of the Lord. Sri Swarup Damodar further guided me by giving a wonderful explanation of the first shloka of Srimad Bhagavatam, and also showed me how I have to explain the shlokas under the light of Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. End of quote. Well, it came from Srila Bhaktivinoda himself. Later on, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur became manager of the Jagannath Puri temple complex. He used his government power to establish regularly the worship of the deity. In the temple courtyard, he established the Bhakti Mandap, where daily discourses of the Srimad Bhagavatam were held. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur would spend long hours discussing Krishna and chanting the holy name, especially at the Tota Gopinath Mandir, the tomb of the great saint Haridas Thakur, the sacred Siddha Bakul tree, and the Gambhira temple. He made notes on the Vedanta Sutra, and those notes were used by Sri Shamalala Goswami when he published Baladev Vijabhushana's Govinda Bhasya commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. Who's been to the Bakula tree? Yes, Haridas Thakur's Samadhi. Beautiful place. I remember that we were going to Puri. That would be so special to go to the Tota Gopinath temple and to go to Haridas Thakur's Samadhi. And there it was so beautiful. In fact, there was a very ancient Lord Nrsingadev deity, hundreds of years old. I'm not sure. Was that actually worshipped by Prahlad Maharaj? Do you recall? Somebody was saying that at one time. Some head priest there. But I'm not that sure if that's true or not. So, in 1874, near the Jagannath Vallabha Gardens, in a large house adjacent to the Narayan Chattamat, the fourth son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur was born, answering his prayer for the Lord, quote, to send a ray of Vishnu, end of quote, to preach the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world. He was named Bimala Prasad and would later be known as the great Vaishnava, spiritual leader and scholar Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, the spiritual master of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. When Bimala was 6 months old, Lord Jagannath's cart stopped in front of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house in Puri for 3 days during the procession. Bhaktivinoda asked his wife, Bhagavati Devi, to bring the child to view and receive the blessings of Lord Jagannath. As he placed the child before the Lord, a garland from the Lord fell and encircled the baby boy, and the first grain ceremony was performed at that time with sacred food of prasad from Lord Jagannath. So Bimala Prasad stayed in Puri for 10 months after his birth, and then they moved to Bengal, where his infancy was spent at Ranagat, hearing topics of Sri Krishna from his mother. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and his wife Bhagavat Devi were orthodox and virtuous. They never allowed their children to eat anything other than prasad, sacred food offered and offered first to the Lord, nor to associate with bad company. One day, when Bimala Prasad was still a small boy, of no more than 4 years, his father mildly rebuked him for eating a mango, not yet duly offered to Lord Krishna. And Bimala Prasad, although only a child, considered himself an offender to the Lord and vowed never to eat mangoes again. This was a vow that he would follow throughout his life. By the time Bimala was 7 years old, he actually memorized the whole Bhagavad Gita, and he could explain each verse, giving wonderful purports. He gave his own purports. And after that, his father began training him how to become a proofreader and printer, in conjunction with the publishing of Vaishnava literature. At this time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur also discovered that the king of Puri had misappropriated 80,000 rupees. This money belonged to the temple, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur forced the king to offer Lord Jagannath meals 52 times daily in retribution. This diminished the money quickly. The king was furious and began, with the help of 50 pundits, a 30-day tantric ritual sacrifice meant for killing Bhaktivinoda Thakur. When the last oblations were poured into the sacrificial fire, it was the king's son who died, not the pure-hearted Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Wow. So in 1877 to 78, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur took formal Diksha, initiation from Vipin Bihari Goswami, descended from the Janava family of Bhagnapur. Around this time, his 7th son, Lalit Prasad, was born at Ranagat. Many people adopted Vaishnavism, but they could not tell who was a Vaishnava and who was not. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave them shelter and instructed them on this matter most exactedly. Once Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and his son Bimala Prasad went to see Bhaktivinoda's guru, Vipin Bihari Goswami. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's dealings with his Diksha initiating guru were always exemplary. Bhaktivinoda would always play the humble disciple. Once, in the presence of young Bimala Prasad, Bhaktivinoda Thakur bowed down and paid his respectful obeisances to his guru. Vipin Bihari Goswami replied by placing his feet on the Thakur's head. For the young, fiery Bimala Prasad, this was way too much. It was one thing that his father had accepted him as his formal initiating spiritual master, but this was going too far. Bimala Prasad was only 7 years old at the time, but when Bhaktivinoda Thakur left the room, leaving the two of them alone, Bimala Prasad decided to set things straight. Quote, "You are acting like a big guru, and you place your feet on the heads of those who don't know you, who you don't know. If you knew who the Thakur is, you would not do it, but you do not know. My father is a great exalted Nitya Siddha, eternal associate of Sri Radha and Krishna, who has come here to fulfill their mission. Do you think that you are so advanced that you can place your feet on the head of such a person?" I think not. You have proven yourself to be a Kanishta Adhikari by not being able to distinguish between those who are advanced and those who are less advanced. Therefore, I suggest that you desist from this practice any further. End of quote. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj ki jai. 7 years old. Can you imagine? Like little Abai. He could come by and chastise his father's guru. Isn't that amazing? 7 years old like that? Incredible. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur then re-entered the room and the conversation changed. Later that day, Vipin Bihari Goswami mentioned to Bhaktivinoda, quote, "Your son is bold to the point of being rude." End of quote. Later, Thakur Bhaktivinoda found out about the conversation and used to jokingly glorify his exalted son in front of his friends, saying, quote, "He is so fearless that he even chastised my guru, Vipin Bihari Goswami." In 1881, Bhaktivinoda Thakur began publishing Sajjana Toshani, his Vaishnav journal. And then in 1866, at the close of his stay in Naraila, he desired to again see the land of Braja. He took 3 months for this purpose. While there, he met Srila Jagannath Das Babaji, who would move every 6 months between Navadvip and Vrindavan. Meeting him, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur accepted him as his eternally worshipable Shiksha, instructing Guru. During his pilgrimage at this time, he dealt with a gang of criminals known as Kanjaharas, who robbed and killed pilgrims, he gave evidence to the government, and they wiped them out. From Vrindavan, he went to Calcutta and bought a house, now called Ramash Dutt Street, near Bidana Park. He started deity worship of Sri Giridhari, the transcendental form of Krishna who appeared in the form of Govardhan Hill, and called the house Bhakti Bhavan. He was appointed head of the subdivision of Barasa. In the course of excavating the construction of their house, they uncovered a deity of Kurmadev. After initiating his 7-year-old son in the practice of deity worship, Bhaktivinoda entrusted Bimala with the service of the deity of Kurmadev, the Lord's tortoise incarnation. That was pretty amazing. In 1886, during the last year of his stay at Barasat, Bhaktivinoda Thakur published an edition of the Bhagavad Gita with the Sanskrit commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, which he translated into Bengali. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur had undertaken the task at the request of Babu Sarada Charana Mitra, ex-judge of the Calcutta High Commission. He noted that the readers would be indebted to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur for his saintly work. It was, I guess, the first time the Gita was translated in Bengali. When Bhaktivinoda Thakur lived at Sri Rampur, he did a lot of compositions there. He composed and published his masterly Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrita. And he also published Vaishnav Siddhanta Mala, Prema Pradipa, Mana Shiksha, Sajjana Toshani Journal on a regular basis. In Calcutta, he set up the Sri Chaitanya Yantra, a printing press, at the Bhakti Bhavan. Finding the Chaitanya Upanishad was a difficult task. Hardly anyone in Bengal had heard of it. Consequently, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur traveled to many places in its search. Finally, a devoted Vaishnava Pandit named Madhusudana Das sent him an old copy. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote a Sanskrit commentary on the book and called it Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, he lectured and gave readings on books like the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, The Nectar of Devotion by Srila Goswami. In various Vaishnava societies, he published the Hindu Herald, an English periodical, a detailed account of Sri Chaitanya's life. It was at this time that the learned Vaishnavas recognized Bhaktivinoda Thakur and gave him the honorary title of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So, they moved on to Krishna Nagar, where Bhaktivinoda used to go to Navadvip and search for the birth site of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One night he was sitting on the roof of the Rani Dharmashala in Navadvip chanting on his prayer beads when he spotted a tal tree next to a building that gave off a remarkable effulgence. He went to the Krishna Nagar library where he began to study old manuscripts of Chaitanya Bhagavat and Navadvip Dham Parikrama and some old maps of Nadia. He went to the village of Balaldabi and spoke with the elderly people, uncovering facts about modern-day Navadvip. Eventually, he discovered that the place he'd seen from the Dharmashala rooftop was in fact the birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This was confirmed by Srila Jagannath Das Babaji, the head of the Gaudiya Vaishnava community in Nadia. A great festival was held there. In glorification of this sacred place, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur published the Navadvip Dham Mahatmya. In the same year, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur renovated the house of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji at Ravashgat. He took leave from office for 2 years and acquired a plot of land at Sri Godrumadvip, or Swarupa Ganga. He built a retirement house there for his bhajan. In 1890, he established a Namhat there, the marketplace of the holy name. Sometimes Jagannath Das Babaji would visit and have kirtan, chanting devotional songs glorifying Krishna. Several hundred years earlier, Lord Nityananda, the eternal brother of Lord Chaitanya, had established his Namhat in the same place. Bhaktivinoda Thakur considered himself the street sweeper of the Namhat of Lord Nityananda. While he was stationed at Krishna Nagar, every spare moment was spent in Mayapur, the holy land of the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. When the birthplace was uncovered, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Jagannath Das Babaji would worship Lord Chaitanya there. Once, one of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's sons contracted a skin disease. Jagannath Das Babaji told the boy, lie down at the birth site of Lord Chaitanya for the night. He did so, and the next morning he was cured. So next time you go to Mayapur, go to the birth site, lie down for a few minutes if you have any difficulty. In 1892, he traveled and preached in the Bashirahatta district with some other Vaishnavas. All the while he was writing also, he opened many branches of Namhat in different districts of Bengal. The Namhat became a self-sustaining success, which continued to spread even after his return to government service. In this connection, I think it'd be kind of nice just to mention that Jayapataka Maharaj, he instituted a huge Namhat program in Bengal, West Bengal. And I think even today, this Namhat program has filtered throughout the whole world practically by his enthusiasm. Isn't it? That I think he was the one that professed this. Many years ago, I recall that's what he was getting everyone to become involved in, the Namhat program. So it kind of nice to see that he took up this particular idea that Bhaktivinoda Thakur Maharaj instituted and established. It says that Bhaktivinoda Thakur's mercy reached far beyond the geographical boundaries of India or even Asia. He was intent on spreading Krishna consciousness to the West. He sent out a small booklet written in Sanskrit, Sri Gauranga Lila Samarana Mangala Stotram, with a commentary by Srila Shittikanta Vakashpati of Nadia. The introduction, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his life and precepts, was in English. This book found its way into the library of the Royal Isaac Society in London, the library of McGill University of Canada, and other respectable institutions. So, at the Bhakti Kut, the Thakura began solitary bhajan, worship and devotional meditation. He had many visitors. Some simply wanted to disturb him, whereas others were sincere and benefited greatly from his association. In the year 1908, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur took the external dress of a Babaji, signifying one who devotes the remainder of his life to solitary devotional practices, especially chanting the holy names. For the first 2 years, he would travel between Calcutta and Puri and was still writing books. In 1910, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur shut himself away from the world and entered Samadhi, claiming paralysis. He devoted the remainder of his years to solitary bhajan, meditation, prayer, and chanting Lord Krishna's holy names. In 1914, June 23rd, just before noon at Jagannath Puri, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Prabhupada left his body. On the Gaudiya Panchika calendar, this day was also the disappearance day of Sri Gadadhar Pandit. His bodily remains were taken from Orissa back to his beloved Godrum in the land of Nadia, the land of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his eternal pastimes. Amidst Sankirtan congregational chanting of the Lord's holy names, his remains were interred in Godrum. So finishing up here, there was a high court judge in Calcutta. His name was Sarada Charana Mitra. He was a high court judge. He quotes, "I knew Thakur Bhaktivinoda intimately as a friend and a relation. Even under the pressure of official work as a magistrate in charge of a heavy subdivision, he could always find time for devotional contemplation and work. And whenever I met him, or our talk would turn into a few moments from the subject into the subject of bhakti and achintya Veda tattva, and the saintly work that lay before him. Service of God is the only thing he longed for, and service under the government, however honorable, was to him a clog." Last thing I'd like to say is just his schedule. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Maharaj's schedule. It was incredible. So he would he would take rest at 7:30 to 8 o'clock p.m. He would take rest. He'd get up at 10 p.m., light his oil lamp, and write. At 4 a.m., he would take rest till 4:30. He would rise, wash his hands, face, chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra Japa until 7, and then he would write letters. At 7:30, he would read. 8:30, he received guests or continued to read. 9:30 to 9:45, he would take rest. 9:45, morning bath, breakfast of half-quart milk, couple of chapatis, and some fruits. 9:55, go to court in a carriage. He would wear coat and pants to court with double-sized Tulsi neck beads and Vaishnav tilak. He was very strong in his decisions. He would decide immediately. He did not allow any humbug in his court. No upstart could stand before him. He would shave his head monthly. He never allowed harmonium in his Sankirtan, considering it a distraction from the sound of the holy name. He never had any debts. 10 p.m. court began. Till 1 p.m. court finished. He came home and took a bath to refresh. 2 p.m. returned to office. 5 p.m. translate works from Sanskrit to Bengali. Then take evening bath, a meal of rice, couple of chapatis, half quart of milk, half liter. He always consulted a pocket watch and was always accountable, keeping time very punctually. He was always charitable to brahmanas and equally befriended other castes. He never showed pride, and his amiable disposition was a characteristic feature of his life. He never accepted gifts from anyone. He even declined all honors and titles offered by the government to him on the grounds that they might stand against his holy mission of life. He was very strict in moral principles and avoided the luxurious life. He would not even chew betel. He disliked theaters because they were frequented by public women. He spoke Bengali, Sanskrit, English, Latin, Urdu, Persian, and Oriya. He started writing books at age 12 and continued turning out a profuse number of volumes up until his departure from the world. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai. So, just a few minutes. I know it's been here long. I apologize. But we should say something about Gadadhar Pandit. We can be very quick, brief. So, this is a biography on Gadadhar Pandit. It says that Gadadhar Pandit was a childhood friend of Nimai, and both were students in the same school. Gadadhar's parents, Madhav Mishra and Ratnawati, were natives of Chattagram district, but later on moved to Navadvip. Gadadhar Pandit was born in Navadvip. In the Gaur Ganadesh Dipika, verses 147 to 153, it is stated, quote, "The pleasure potency of Sri Krishna, formerly known as Vrindavaneshwari, sorry. It says Vaneshwari. I thought I was going to say that too, but it says Vaneshwari. Okay. Srimati Radharani is personified in the form of Sri Gadadhar Pandit in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that's Gadadhar Pandit. There's a few little pastimes here that we can just read very quickly. From his very childhood, Gadadhar had followed behind Nimai as if he were his shadow. Gadadhar was quite detached from the world. His only object of attachment was Nimai. Nimai called Gadadhar and told him, "My dear Gadadhar, since your early childhood you have always been devoted to Lord Krishna, but I have simply wasted my time in false pursuits and achieving nothing." At one time I too was close to Sri Krishna, but due to my own fault, I have now lost this invaluable treasure. Please tell me, how can I find him again? He wept inconsolably and lost consciousness again. After some time, seeing Gadadhar alone, Nimai asked him again, "Where is my Lord Krishna? Please tell me." Gadadhar answered, "Your Krishna is hidden within your heart." At this time, Nimai started digging into his chest with his nails. Gadadhar leaped forward and held Nimai's hands tightly. Mother Sachi happened to witness this incident and ran up to them and told Gadadhar, "You have just saved my Nimai." She blessed him and said, "Stay with Nimai for your entire life so that my son may be protected." Little pastime. I'll read one more. Sri Gadadhar Pandit was very affectionate towards Mukunda Dat. Whenever any Vaishnava saint came to Navadvip, Mukunda would inform Gadadhar, and they would both go to have darshan. One time Pundarik Vidyanidhi came from Chattagram to Navadvip, and Mukunda invited Gadadhar to come along and meet him. Gadadhar was very excited to meet an exalted Vaishnava, and the two of them happily set out together to have a darshan of the famous Pundarik Vidyanidhi. However, Gadadhar was not prepared for the sight that met his eyes. He saw that Pundarik Vidyanidhi was dressed in fine silk, his lips red with the juice of betel leaf, and was reclining on a fine couch resting against velvet cushions. His servants were fanning him and spraying scented oil all around the room. Gadadhar Pandit was not impressed. How could this apparently sensual person be called a great Vaishnava? He wondered. He was disappointed and wanted to leave immediately. However, Mukunda knew the real character of Pundarik Vidyanidhi. and he could also sense the doubts in the mind of Gadadhar Pandit. Thus he recited some shlokas from Srimad Bhagavatam in a very sweet voice. When Pundarik Vijayanidhi heard his beautiful recitation of these shlokas, in a fit of ecstasy, he began to cry while calling Krishna, Krishna, and rolled about on the bed, his clothes falling into disarray. Soon he fainted dead away on the floor. Gadadhar now felt remorseful in his mind. He thought to himself, quote, because I have ignorantly considered this highly advanced soul to be an ordinary materialist, what an offense I have committed. In order that I might be saved from the reaction of this offense, I think the only solution is to accept initiation from him. Gadadhar Pandit submitted his proposal to Mukunda, who presented it to Pundarik Vijayanidhi with a full account of the Pandit's high qualifications. Quote, hearing this proposal, Pundarik became very happy. Providence has bestowed upon me a great jewel. Certainly I will accept him. You shouldn't have any doubt about that. It is a result of many lifetimes of good fortune that I get a disciple like this. End of quote. On an auspicious day, Sri Gadadhar Pandit received the divine mantra from Pundarik Vijayanidhi. Another little sentence. Prior to taking initiation, Gadadhar Pandit discussed the matter with Nimai, asking if his offense would be forgiven by taking Diksha from Pundarik Vijayanidhi. Nimai told him not to delay a single moment and take initiation as soon as possible. Mahaprabhu asked Gadadhar Pandit to do 3 activities on his behalf. 1, to be the authoritative teacher of Srimad Bhagavatam. 2, give Diksha or formal initiation on behalf of Mahaprabhu to the true seekers on the path of pure Braja Bhakti. 3, worship the deity of Sri Gopinath along with his eternal consort, Sri Radha. Soon after, Gadadhar took the vow of Chaitra Sannyas, limiting oneself to one particular place, so as to do uninterrupted seva of Lord Sri Gopinath. There's a pastime about that, where when Lord Chaitanya was going to do his traveling, Gadadhar Pandit wanted to go with him. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wouldn't let him do it, because he didn't want him to cancel out his commitment that he made, the vow that he made. So, okay. Well, I think that's about it. Yes. All right. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Maharaj ki jai. Shri Gadadhar Pandit ki jai. Thank you for your patience.
Krishna Thank you. He